There's been a lot of movies based on video games over the years, and whilst a fair few of them might be guilty pleasures for some, it's almost universally agreed that they veer towards being pretty bad films. I mean, they're notorious for it. And although they can do well financially, they've yet to meet wide critical success. Well, why is that? Why is it these adaptations tend to fall flat? What is it studios are doing wrong? Now, there's a lot that goes into making a game, just as there's a lot that goes into making a movie, but they are two entirely different mediums. Yeah, they both aim to entertain and immerse you into a story and world and, sometimes change your life, but how they do that is unique to the medium. I wanted to make this video because I recently read the synopsis for the Monster Hunter movie, and it got me thinking, what the hell was going on in that writing room when they came up with this? This is the synopsis.
What kind of shit is that?
A sandstorm portal? The military against the monsters? Why? What is this? What was the need for the real world in this film? How do you explain that the monsters are immune to guns but not dual blades? Also, Monster Hunter has a bowgun. I just don't understand why this movie couldn't take place in the world of Monster Hunter and tell its end of the world story there. What was the need to drag in the real world through a sandstorm portal? Now, I could easily make a whole video on this, but if you've played any Monster Hunter game, you know this is just stupid. See, I think one of the main reasons most of these video game adaptations tend to suck is because of the lack of respect for the source material. A lot of the times, these movies are made by people who are more concerned about the money. They fail to understand what made the game they're adapting so great and why people loved it, and instead they focus on the surface level things. Tomb Raider is a perfect example of this. It looks like any other action movie during that time, but, it's got Angelina Jolie doing flips and she's got the dual pistols like in the game. Video games are an art form, and they deserve to be looked at as more than just an easy way to make money in the world of film. Saying that, we now have a lot of writers and directors who grew up playing these games, and they have that respect that was once missing. However, there are still so many variables that separate a game and a movie. For starters, a movie just can't include everything a game has to offer. It's vital to remember that a major aspect that contributes to the experience of a game is, well, playing the game. There is no other medium as interactable as a video game, and that's what makes them so engaging and immersive. It's that interactable aspect that is the major driving force when it comes to the experience of a video game. And that entire notion of playing the game, it's sacrificed when it comes to adapting it for the big screen. You were in that story. You played it. Not watched, played. It was designed to be experienced in a very specific way, with you controlling the characters, you making those decisions, you fighting those bosses. That's what makes games so amazing. If we look at the Assassin's Creed games for a moment, they're fun due to the nature of the gameplay. Exploring the past and using parkour to traverse beautiful landscapes and architecture is, for me, what makes these games so enjoyable. The overarching narrative of the franchise, on the other hand, is convoluted and boring. This isn't why the games are so popular. Now, when the franchise received the Hollywood treatment, it bombed completely despite it being quite faithful. Why was that? Well, because of the convoluted and boring plot. Surprisingly, it didn't do any better in the world of cinema. And that's why faithfulness alone isn't enough to make a video game movie good. It's still a film at the end of the day, and it needs to have a good script, it needs to have good performances, it needs to have those things that make a film good. Another important aspect to consider is that some games can take anywhere from 10 to 100 hours to finish an experience. It's impossible to capture everything a player went through, so instead these movies will take the main narrative and condense it down to fit into a 2-hour movie. By doing that, you lose out on so much of the actual journey and, the little moments that added so much to the experience. It's like when you hear that the book was better than the film because it had more time to flesh out the characters and plot points. It's the same thing here. Now, I don't think making a great video game adaptation is impossible. In fact, I think they could eventually have their breakthrough. I can think of a few off the top of my head that I quite enjoyed. Detective Pikachu, Street Fighter Assassin's Fist was one of the first ones I genuinely enjoyed, and Sonic the Hedgehog. I mean, more recent attempts have proven fruitful and are potentially a sign that these adaptations are finding their footing. If we just rewind and look at the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, I think that's the best video game movie we've ever had. Is it amazing? No. Is it terrible? No. But you can tell it's made by people who care about the character and understood what kind of movie this should be. The key thing to get right here is Sonic, and they nailed that. A lot of that has to do with Ben Schwartz, who voices the iconic Hedgehog. I mean, it's clear to see how much love he had for this character. Not only that, but it's clear to see how much love the director had for the character, and that's why this film works. It was apparent this movie was made by fans the minute they delayed it to redesign Sonic. I still can't believe they thought this was okay. I mean, yeah, it's essentially a kids' film, but it's for the fans too, and I can appreciate that. The premise is simple and accessible, revolving around loneliness, which makes it easily digestible both for kids and adults. This movie works because everyone involved knew what kind of film this should be, and yeah, it's filled with Easter eggs and references to appeal to the fans, but it doesn't rely on that to be a good film. You see, the Sonic games aren't focused on delivering an interesting story, but a film still needs to have some sort of narrative that provides an explanation for what's happening on screen. A game can get away with just being fun, and yeah, you could argue so can a film, but you still need to be invested, and that's harder to do when you're watching, not playing. Sonic is a character you could tell any kind of story with, and it could be good as long as you get him right, and include the fun, fast action that you'd expect from him. And I think that's one of the main things that studios need to understand, is that you can't make one video game movie the same as another video game. And that's why it's so important to respect the source material and genuinely understand it. You need to know what components to take from the game and implement into a film. Some things aren't going to work on the big screen. See, I've always thought that if Hollywood wants to create movies based on video games, then they need to focus on games that leave room to expand upon the world and characters created. You know, telling an original story that acts as an extension of the game, as opposed to replicating what we've already experienced. Think about it. Do you think watching the Last of Us TV show that retells the story of Joel and Ellie is going to be any better than the first time you played that game? I don't know about you, but I don't think it'll even come close. Instead, why not tell a story that utilizes the game's world? That way you've got a lot more room to maneuver when writing, and it allows filmmakers to selectively explore certain aspects that the game might not have. Plus, the game can then easily appeal to both fans and casual audiences. Fallout is a series that revolves around a post-apocalyptic world, home to some really interesting characters and mutated monsters. Players find themselves entangled in multiple quests with a range of different stories, and this sort of backdrop could easily make for an excellent movie. The same goes for a Bioshock series. The world that 2K have created allows for a lot of creative freedom. A film set in the Rapture or Columbia, or even a new city that tackles some of the deep concepts the game raised, could still be incredible. Not to mention that with the right crew, it could be visually astounding. It's so important that these movies are made by people who understand what initially made that game great. Was it the characters, the world, the action? At that point you can determine what kind of movie you should be making, or whether or not it will even work as a movie. Now I know that sometimes you do just want to see a certain game adapted straight to film, because you want to see what it would look like if it was, well, real. You see, the strength of a film comes from its ability to convey information and visuals in such spectacular fashion. It forces audiences to truly lose themselves in the world and story, unable to pause what is on screen. It's a different form of immersion, and being able to witness some of these detailed and beautiful game worlds on the big screen would be mind-blowing. Just as playing a game provides a unique experience, so does a film, and it can give us a different perspective on the game we thought we knew everything about. But the thing is, a lot of AAA modern games are so cinematic that they don't really need the adaptation. I remember for the longest time craving a Shadow of the Colossus movie because I wanted to see those massive Goliaths on screen, but as I got older I realised it just wouldn't work. I don't think a movie could ever capture the beauty of that game and the overall experience. There are over 60 video game movies in development right now, including the likes of Mortal Kombat, Call of Duty, Uncharted, Monster Hunter, and even Tetris. I don't know what they're going to do with that one. It's evident though that recent attempts are clearly having more success than previous entries, so maybe studios are finally catching on. If they can forget about the box office for just 1 second and focus their attention on creating a good film first, then maybe going forward video game adaptations will finally find their stride. Look at comic book movies. People looked at those as nothing more than kids' films with bright colours and silly outfits. Fast forward 20 years and that's all Hollywood is. It fundamentally comes down to two things. 1, picking the right game, and 2, having a crew that genuinely understands what kind of movie they should be making. I still get excited when I hear that my favourite games are getting movies or TV shows, but there's also that worry that they'll turn out like Doom or Super Mario Brothers. Now I know that I've said the word experience a lot in this video, but it's at the core of this whole conversation. Watching a film and playing a game are two different experiences. One involves being a spectator, whilst the other involves taking part. The thing that I never understood is why we put movies on this pedestal as this superior art form, better than books and games. They're different, and we don't need to cross everything over all the time. Having something exist in one medium is okay. I mean, can you imagine a video game based on The Wolf of Wall Street or Taxi Driver? It wouldn't work because it was made to be a film, not anything else. But we're going to keep getting these video game adaptations whether we like it or not, because they make money. My hope is that going forward, the industry understands that not every game needs an adaptation, but if they are going to do it, then take the time to understand the game and how you should really translate it over to film. I'm still going to go watch that Monster Hunter movie because it might not be as bad as it sounds. If anything, it should deliver on some cool monster action, right? Oh, fuck.